video in internal medicine. God bless you. Thanks for joining me. Today we are breaking down leprosy. Just a quick joke. Did you hear about the con man who had leprosy? He was a leprechaun. Alrighty. Okay, everybody. Today we have a 50-year-old man who hails from India. And he comes through to you presenting with a 6-month history of a hypopigmented plaque on his arm that is sharply demarcated and hypoaesthetic. He has had these treated with topical steroids, but the plaques did not improve, unfortunately. A biopsy is obtained of the edge of the lesion and shows that T cells have invaded the peripheral nerves in the dermis. Oh dear. Which of the following statements regarding his condition are true? And this is the lesion that we can see. It's markedly hypopigmented, has an obvious border, and it's hypoaesthetic as well. Is it A, his disease is more consistent with tuberculoid leprosy rather than lepromatous leprosy? B, the incubation period for this disease is about a year. Is it C, the central nervous system is often involved? Nah. D, the central part of the lesion has the highest sensitivity for the diagnosis. Or E, treatment is with rifampicin and isoniazid. Alrighty guys, so first up, what is leprosy and what are the different types? Well, leprosy is a chronic granulomatous disabling disease caused by our beloved Mycobacterium leprae. Now, you know, this Mycobacterium seems very, very familiar, isn't it? This is a cousin of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Indeed, it involves the peripheral nerves, skin, mucosa, bones, and viscera. Incubation period is quite long, about 3 to 5 years. And there are 5 types of leprosy. There's a tuberculoid leprosy, borderline tuberculoid flavor, borderline leprosy, and borderline lepromatous leprosy. You would swear that Mycobacterium leprae has borderline personality disorder. And of course, the 5th variant is lepromatous leprosy. All right, so here are some nice images courtesy of Shock Cases in Clinical Medicine. God bless you guys. So here we can see a depressed nasal bridge. Now the differential for a saddle nose deformity or a depressed nasal bridge is quite extensive, but leprosy is one of them, together with Wegener's granulomatosis, people who sniff cocaine, and a whole variety of others. Right here we can appreciate nodules. We also have the so-called leonine facies, a hypopigmented patch that you can see in the chest here. Here we see a hypopigmented patch and nodule on the back. More images. Also, we know that Mycobacterium leprae has an affinity for the peripheral nerves, and we'll talk about that. But here we can see a thickened greater auricular nerve and a facial lesion. Here we can see nodules in the dorsum of the hands and feet. This is what we call erythema nodosum leprosum, and we alluded to this in our previous video on erythema nodosum. And here is a nodule in the ear lobule. All right, let's break down the types of leprosy. Well, depending on the cell-mediated immunity, it is either one of 2 types, a polar form and a borderline form. Not bipolar now, because bipolar and borderline are DSM-5 criteria. No! Also, depending on the number of organisms, we divide it into porcibacillary and multibacillary. So porcibacillary simply means that a skin smear for Mycobacterium leprae, we look at it and under the microscope, and if the bacilli are negative or a few, then you can probably say that this is the tuberculoid or the borderline tuberculoid variant. But if it's multibacillary, implying that the skin smear for Mycobacterium leprae, there are lots of bacilli, then you think it's probably going to be borderline tuberculoid, borderline lepromatous or lepromatous leprosy. Alrighty, what investigations are really done to diagnose leprosy? Well, you want to do a slit skin smear, a nasal scraping, or a biopsy from a skin lesion or thickened nerve, and send it off for staining for acid-fast bacilli. Or some people say bacilli, some people say bacilli. And also a skin biopsy for histopathology. In the tuberculoid type, what you're going to see is epithelioid granulomata. In the lepromatous leprosy, we find Mycobacterium leprae may be found in the skin macrophage, also among Schwann cells and perineurium in your peripheral nerves. Alright, so we said that Mycobacterium leprae loves to hang out in and involve the peripheral nerves. Which nerves are commonly involved in leprosy? There's about 9 common types. So supraorbital, then there's a facial nerve involved in crossing of the zygomatic arch, the greater auricular nerve, where you feel this in the posterior triangle of the neck. We saw an image of that. You get the involvement of the radial nerve in the humerus, and there's nothing funny about that. the ulnar nerve at the elbow, the radial cutaneous nerve in the wrist, median nerve, you can palpate that with the wrist, the common peroneal. This is a common exam question. You palpate that thickened nerve at the back of the knee. Don't forget that should form part of your routine assessment of the nervous system. And posterior tibial and pseudo nerve at the ankle. So what are the complications of leprosy? Well, it can lead to a deformity, right, in the way of claw, hand, or foot drop or wrist drop because of involvement of these peripheral nerves. These will eventually give rise to deformities in your limbs, blindness, right, due to keratitis and iritis, orchitis causing primary gonadal failure. You can have secondary amyloidosis and, of course, peripheral neuropathy. So how does one treat leprosy? Well, it depends on the type, and we said that there are 5 different types. If it's paucibacillary, implying that there's 3 to 5 skin lesions, the skin smear is negative or few, and it's the tuberculoid or borderline tuberculoid variant, then we treat with rifampicin 600 milligrams monthly and dapsone 100 milligrams daily for a period of 6 months. If it's a paucibacillary single lesion, not married, single, then you treat with rifampicin 600 milligrams or fluoxetine 400 milligrams, this is fluoroquinolone, and minocycline 100 milligrams in a single dose. But if you're dealing with multibacillary leprosy, where there's more than 5 skin lesions and skin smear is positive, then you opt for rifampicin 600, clofazimine, our good friend, 300 milligrams monthly. Where did we see this? In the treatment of MDR, TB, dapsone 100 milligrams and clofazimine 50 milligrams daily for 12 months or until the skin smear is negative, which may take up to 24 months. What's the differential diagnosis of a hypopigmented lesion? Okay, so fungal infection is probably one of the most common. You think about tinea corporis involving the whole body, tinea versicolor, or some people call it pityriasis versicolor, which is caused by Malassezia furfur. It's one of the fungal organisms. Post-color azar dermal leishmaniasis, PKDL, systemic lupus erythematosus, tuberculoid leprosy, and of course psoriasis. All of those can give you hypopigmented lesions. Alrighty. And what are the side effects of dapsone and clofazimine? Well, dapsone is renowned for causing hemolytic anemia. So what happens in hemolytic anemia is that your hemoglobin is going to be low. Right, you're hemolyzing, so your LDH, your lactate dehydrogenase, is going to be high, and your haptoglobin is going to be low. And if your bone marrow is functional, you're going to see a commensurate increase in your reticulocyte count. So your RPI is going to be high. Dapsone can also cause agranulocytosis, exfoliative dermatitis. It can cause a transaminitis and hepatitis, hypoproteinemia, and psychosis. Oh, I'm feeling a bit crazy, Arby. Dapsone, maybe? Sorry about that. Right, and clofazimine is known to cause red discoloration of the skin, urine, and body secretions, like its good cousin in the faith. Rifampicin, which causes orange discoloration, clofazimine causes a red discoloration, right? Anorexia, nausea and vomiting, abdominal pain, and pruritus. Itching a lot, carry on. So guys, back to our clinical case. We had a 50-year-old man who came from India with a 6-month history of a hypopigmented plaque on his arm that is sharply demarcated, as we can see, and hypoaesthetic. You tried steroids to no avail, and a biopsy is obtained at the edge of the lesion and shows T cells have invaded the peripheral nerves in the dermis, right? So the answer to this one is gonna be his disease is more consistent with tuberculoid leprosy rather than lepromatous leprosy, right? So this patient has no doubt tuberculoid leprosy as represented by a well-defined hypopigmented anesthetic macule and raised granular margin. In the tuberculoid variant, these lesional areas, preferably of advancing age, must be biopsied because normal appearing skin simply does not display the pathological features histologically speaking. Everybody, just to encourage you from the Bible, I want to talk about an ambition to please God. And I pray that will be the desire of our hearts, to seek God, to serve Him, to run after Him, and not just have a desire to get to heaven, but a desire to live for the Lord while we are on earth. The book of 1 Thessalonians 4 verse 11 says, make it your ambition, all right? Many of us have a lot of ambitions in life. But I pray that it'll be our desire, it'll be our ambition to lead a quiet life, to mind our own business and work with our hands. The book of 1 Peter 3:13 says, who is there to harm you if you are indeed eager to do good? These are my references, everybody. Thanks for joining me as we broke down leprosy today. I'll catch you tomorrow with another helpful video, and we're going to be addressing another pivotal topic in internal medicine. God bless you and your family. I'll see you soon.